Welcome to the Indie Musician Summit 2021 with your host, Kate Westwood, brought to you by Westwood Management.
Welcome back to the Indie Musician Summit. Kate here again, and I'm so excited to introduce you to our speaker for today, for right now. This is Caroline Mcknight. She is from APRA AMCOS here in Australia. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Woo! Just as we've been chatting before we hit record, Indie Musician Summit attendees, I think you're just going to love this lady. You're going to love what she has to bring. We're going to be talking about this whole thing of copyright and royalties and registrations for people who write music and compose. But before we get into that, Caroline, why don't you just give us a bit of an insight? Because we don't want to just focus on what you do. We want to get to know you as well, because that's what the whole industry is about. It's not just about the business of it. It's about the relationships and the connections. So tell us a little bit about your journey, your experience, and how you came to be doing what you're doing right now.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So nice to speak to you finally. And hi everyone. So as Kate said, I do work at APRA AMCOS at the moment. I work in the education and outreach space. So my job is to look after songwriters and composers, and I'm really passionate about that. And it's something I guess I've always been very passionate about. My background has been started off in visual art, so making visual art, and studying, and then moving into spaces like, working in festivals and public works, and then I ended up managing some art galleries and doing stuff like that. And I fell into working at APRA and copyright and music. I'm really passionate about music, and I don't make it. So I'm one of those people who work in the background. And I think working at a place like APRA has always made me feel very happy, because it feels so genuinely supportive of creatives. So that's always been my real passion point.
I love that. I love, the range of speakers that we have. Some are musicians, some are not, but all the idea is we love music and we really want to support the industry. We want to be a help and an encouragement to the artists that are trying to figure out this crazy journey of being a musician and an artist. So yeah, that's a cool history there. So tell us a little bit more about the artist services and the education services and what that means for you and your team in engaging with artists.
Sure. So I guess maybe the first thing to discuss would be just to say what APRA AMCOS is. And depending on where you are from or where you're living currently, you will have an organisation like APRA AMCOS in your territory. Our job is essentially, we're a music management organisation. We're a copyright collection society. That means that our primary role is to collect and distribute royalties for people who make music. So if you're a creator, you're a composer, you own copyright in your songs, and therefore you have a right to collect some money from that when it's performed in public or broadcast or streamed, all that kind of stuff. So our job is to look after our members. We kind of currently look after, it's mainly Australia and New Zealand artists. We have over 110,000 members, so there's a lot. And our job in our department is to speak to those members, speak to people who are potential members, help them out with their journey, educate them. We go out and do lots of conversations like this. We go to educational facilities like unis and TAFEs, and we kind of are trying to spread the word really about the benefits of what it is that we do, because there is a lot.
Yes. Okay. So APRA is, correct me if I'm wrong, is a performing rights organisation, so a PRO. So some of the ones that if people are not from Australia, BMI and ASCAP are two of the main ones in the US. Now Australia is strange. We only have one. A lot of countries have multiple. I think something I heard about Brazil has something like 16 or something like that. Something crazy. If you do a Google search, there's a lot of performing rights organisations, and you can choose which ones you're a part of. Here in Australia, I think it's great that we just have one, because there's this one place to get all your information, and it's important to be registered in your home country or the country where you're essentially registered for tax, because that's how it's all going to work. How easy or difficult is it to actually, how do you actually do that? Do you have to have released music? What does it look like to join APRA?
So I guess first and foremost, you're right. In Australia and New Zealand, we only have one, and we're APRA AMCOS. So APRA is the performing rights organisation, and AMCOS is the mechanical rights organisation. So a different kind of set of royalties. Performing rights being public performances of music. So if you get up and play live, If you play your original songs, we'll pay you a royalty for that. If you get streamed online, you'll get a royalty for that. Broadcast on radio or TV. So that's APRA. AMCOS is the reproduction and mechanical royalties. So often sales, downloads, things like that of your music. There's a mechanical right as well. You would usually choose to join a mechanical right organisation if you were an unpublished artist. Otherwise, your publisher collects those royalties. But APRA, those performing rights, you really need a performing right organisation to collect it for you. Otherwise, you're going around to radio stations and asking for a bit of money, or you're, it's a royalty that's kind of impossible to get unless you have a performing rights organisation. And a lot of our members do, as much as they may start here, so many of our members obviously move overseas, and they can remain members of APRA AMCOS as well. We can continue to collect for them worldwide. So a very important key point is that all of those organisations are affiliated with one another. So as you said, America has multiple organisations, the main ones being ASCAP and BMI. In the UK, we've got PRS. So there's a lot of different ones out there. We are affiliated with each of them. So regardless of where you exist, if you join up with the organisation, probably where you're from or where you're residing, and probably plan to kind of be for a long time, you join up with that organisation and you'll continue to earn royalties from within your territory, but also from overseas as well. So when our members earn money from, let's say, their songs played on the radio in a country outside of Australia or New Zealand, the society in that territory collects the royalty and sends it over to us, and we pay the member, and vice versa. So that's kind of the way that it works. Did I just cover your question?
Yes, I think that's a really good overview of what PROs do, because I'm sure people have a question of like, which one do I register with?
Yeah.
I love that there is that international collection society, especially in this digital age where everything's connected to an ISRC. So every song and every new cover or new version of that recorded art has a registration code that's easily,
exactly,
and trackable, especially in this digital space. So that's a really good overview. If someone wants to join APRA, if they've never done that, and what are the requirements or the questions, I guess, you're eligible, you're not eligible, what would that look like?
So eligibility comes down to, have you written or co-written an original song? At which point and copyright around the world is different in each territory, but here in Australia and New Zealand, copyright is automatic. And that means that once you've finished a song, and when I say finished, I don't mean recorded, I just mean you kind of go, I'm done, the chords and the melody and the lyrics are done, or, the composition is complete. Maybe you've sung it into your iPhone, something like that. It's recognised automatically as being covered for copyright. So what that means is we don't copyright songs, despite what many people think. What we do is we collect royalties on behalf of the copyright owners. So as soon as you've completed a song, and if you have had one of those songs that you've written performed live, streamed, broadcast, or it's available online, or there's sales of your music taking place, if any of those things have happened, then you're eligible. So if you write one song and get up and play at an open mic night, you're eligible to join APRA. And so at that point, you come to us, it's all online, it's free, you never pay us anything, and our job then is you register songs with us. And when you register those songs, what you're telling us, or what you are telling your PRO that you're a member of, is the real basic information about that song. And that's usually the title, how long it goes for, very basically, it changes obviously, who the copyright owners are, and what their percentage of ownership is. That's a really key point. So let's say, Kate, if you and I wrote a song together, we'd determine what the title is. We decide who owns what. So maybe I wrote the lyrics and you wrote the music. We might decide to go 50-50. Or if it fell differently, maybe you get 75%, I'd get 25%. We agree on whatever that is. And then we go and one of us would register that song with APRA AMCOS. And going further, let's say I'm a member of APRA and you're a member of another society in another territory, like PRS in the UK. You would then go and register that song with your PRO, and I would register it with my PRO, and we'd make sure those registrations are the same. So then internationally, whenever any of those performances take place, we'll each get the correct royalty come through to us from our society.
So helpful. Understanding like lots of gems there around copyright. Now, copyright, I remember doing this at uni, and I got like 100% on my exam, so I was just like, right now. Loved it. But it is such a confusing area, right? And it can be so grey, and with digital capacity to copy and paste, and it can be quite a really confusing space. And I want to just drill down without spending hours on it, but this whole thing of, you said lyrics and melody, but what about the producer? What about the person who does the beats? What about the person who writes the chords or plays the drums? Can you help dispel a couple of myths around what actually legally is covered in copyright, but then what's the best way to work with people in that space of, those splits, just like you were saying?
It's a really good question, and I will say it can be very convoluted. You're right. I think that the idea would be, and you're completely right, it's way more complex than just lyrics and melody often. So often a producer will also be recognised as a copyright owner, but you'll find that with different kinds of music, a producer's role really varies. So, if you take a standard, and again, not every situation is like this, but let's say a standard song, like a song written by a singer-songwriter. They write the lyrics and they write the melody, and they take it to get it recorded, and the producer is there to make it sound good. Whereas if as opposed to, let's say, a hip hop track, where someone might write the beats, someone writes the lyrics, then someone else is there writing a lot of the music, and then you've got a producer or a couple of producers. They're there making those songs in the studio, and the producer plays a really integral part in the creation of the way that that song is structured and put together. And that's when the role of producer comes in and out. So a producer absolutely has the potential to be a copyright owner, but it does depend on their input, and it will depend on, often, I don't want to say the genre of music, but it is the way in which that producer actually plays a role. So then, and like you said, a drummer in a band, they sometimes there might be something like, if you're told what the song sounds like and you kind of play along with that, then you wouldn't be recognized as the copyright owner in the song itself. When I say the song itself, I mean the writing of the music, and that's what we look after. But then there's copyright in the sound recording. To get way more complex, there's copyright in the musical work itself, and then there's copyright in the sound recording. So when it's taken into the studio and recorded, there could be a different set of people that would own the copyright in that. What we look after is the copyright in the song itself. So if I wrote a song and I took it to a band and said, let's play this song, and they kind of just played along with it, I would be recognised as the copyright owner, and they might just be copyright owners in the sound recording. But then again, if we're all in the room together when we're writing together, and the parts that are being created and it's all being done together, then that's when the people who are playing would also be recognised. It's very nuanced. And I think the number one rule is have a conversation at the time. When a song is complete, and when I say complete, I mean when the song kind of it's fleshed out and it's ready to go. It's ready to go into the studio and make it sound good. That's the point where you need to kind of have a conversation with the people you wrote it with and decide how to structure it. And don't put off those conversations, because if you do, it's amazing how much people forget or how much the story can change. So be really prepared to have those conversations at the time, or even before. If you're going to get together and have a co-writing session with people, have a chat to them and say, okay, we're going to register these songs afterwards with APRA or APRA AMCOS or your PRO. How are we going to do it?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. It's exactly then my next question was, what would you recommend in just supporting and protecting one another? Because as we were talking about at the beginning, the whole idea is that relationship is going to be so much more valuable than a one song. And if you're especially going to be writing really regularly, having an equitable relationship may be more valuable than nitpicking over your 10% and her 5% and those kind of things. And so I love that suggestion, and I think that's a great tip for anyone watching, that if you're writing, just at the beginning and at the end of every writing session, just say, how do we go? Are we happy to do this, a straight split? Even if I do all the lyrics and melody and you just do the guitar, actually you wrote it together. Yeah. Even though legally I own the copyright because I did the lyrics and the melody, you can't copyright a chord progression. But we did it together, and it was equitable. And it was that sense of writing together and supporting one another. That actually builds so much more equity in relationship and in ongoing writing than trying to say, well, no, sorry, I own it all, you don't own anything. So
I completely agree. And I think as long as everyone agrees, that's the number one point. And I will say as well, get it in writing, maybe. And I don't mean you have to go out and have some legally binding document. I do think send each other an email, say, do we agree on this? This is the title. This is the splits. Are we all good to go? You've got it in writing then. And everyone is different. There are some, some bands, let's say, or co-writing, groups will say they always agree. Whatever they do together, it's split evenly. But then that's not always the case with everyone. As long as everyone's happy at the time, that's what you need to do.
That's great. So awesome. So let's say we've written a song, I performed it, maybe I even uploaded it to SoundCloud, which is how I got on and started with APRA. Is I hadn't recorded anything, and I thought that was a limit for me to actually join because I hadn't released any music yet. So I haven't, it's not legal yet. And so I put it up on SoundCloud and a couple of people were listening to it. And then I was like, okay, now I'm legit, so I love the ease of access into that space. And so why is it important for an artist? Why should I do that? Like, what is the point of, especially if I haven't released music or, nobody makes much money from streaming. Like, is it really important for a composer or a songwriter to register with their PRO?
I do think that it's extremely important, and I think it's probably important for a couple of reasons. One of them being you could potentially be missing out on royalties, whether it's a small amount, or often it can be quite a big amount. It can be surprising sometimes. I think there's something very valuable in earning a royalty for something that you have created, and it's quite validating. And I think that, and not to underestimate actually what you can potentially earn. And there are some royalties, I will say, every society is a little bit different in the way that they collect. But let's say with APRA AMCOS, a big way that so many of our members do earn is through live performances. And I know live is a bit dead in the water at the moment, unfortunately, but there's also streaming, like live streaming performances. Our system is that we do what's called performance reports, and that's when our members submit to us a report on all the gigs that they've played. So they tell us the venue, they tell us the date, and they give us the set list for each of those performances. As long as you've registered those songs, we'll pay a royalty per performance per song. The reason that exists is because our job, the way we get our money, is not because people don't pay to become a member and we're not government funded. Our money comes from the people who are authorising performances of music. So a venue that puts on bands and gigs, they have to pay a licence to APRA. There's a lot of different ways we collect those licence fees. So we have to do something with that money, and we pay it out in royalties in all different forms. Now, a self-reporting system is the performance report system, and if you don't submit, we can't pay you. It's a big way that members kind of do get sort of ongoing royalties in that way. And so, as I said, we have a live streaming performance report as well at the moment to support artists who are obviously, that's pretty much the way that people are performing at the moment. So I do think it's probably also really about understanding your rights, knowing what your rights are as a music creator. It's huge. And I have seen so many times people who probably haven't educated themselves properly and understood what their rights are and understood how to really work in the industry. And if you're serious about it, there's too many elements that you need to be aware of, and this is one of them. It's a really key point. It's kind of the foundation. I think that royalties for a songwriter is something that you get to keep for yourself. So much in the industry gets given out to so many other parties and other people. This is one of those areas that you get to kind of keep for yourself. I think it's a very important element.
That's so great. Hey, question on those performance reports. So if I play my own songs that I've registered, then I can do that. What if I play a cover of, Adele or my friend who is another artist, and do a cover of one of their songs? Do I register? Do I report on them as well?
Yeah, report it. They'll get paid a royalty. So you don't have to pay anything. The public performance of music taking place is being, it'll be covered by a license that's within that venue or place that you're playing. You might as well put it on your set list. If it's your song, you'll get the royalty. If it's your friend's song, they'll get the royalty. If it's Adele, she'll get the royalty. She'll appreciate the couple of dollars.
I love that. I love that encouragement to support. That's a great way as an artist you can support your other friends in music, is to cover their
Definitely.
song.
Well, so many artists too, I mean, songwriters who aren't performers, you know, this is what they're relying on. This is huge. And I think too, there are specific kind of areas of the industry. If you take a lot of classical and jazz composers, they may be composers, but they may not be the people performing. So they're really relying on those performers submitting those performance reports as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so interesting. And you know, I think one thing I love about what you guys do is you have so many great resources on your website. And I'm not sure about BMI and ASCAP and these other guys. I'm hoping and I'm assuming they would as well. But if people are interested and want to find out more, we'll put some links below. But there's so many great. I can always go, okay, how do I do a split? I just type it in and there's some kind of article or PDF or something. I actually have one on my wall that says the cycle of like a royalty, like
the story of a song.
Like, oh, that's helpful for me. I just grabbed that at some event, and you know, just great resources. And I love that you're actually doing what you say you're going to do in terms of connecting and supporting artists in that space. So thank you for that.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. No, and there's real people there to talk to as well. So if you ever want to actually jump on live chat or we've got a little chat bot that provides a bunch of answers as well. So yeah.
So can you just dive a little bit into the difference between APRA and a PRO collecting royalties versus getting paid from your online distributor? So I register my song with TuneCore or Ditto or DistroKid, and I upload my music to Spotify and Apple and iTunes and Deezer and all those things. Mm-hmm. Are they what's the percentage of what I get paid from them versus what comes through? Let's say I'm an artist and I own 100% of the song royalty, and I also own 100% of the sound recording. So I'm not, you know, and most of us will be indie artists. We probably may not be writing with other people, and we pay for it ourselves. So how is it the same? Is it different?
It is different. It is different, and you'll notice what will happen is, so you will get paid from them definitely, and you'll notice that the lion's share of the payment will come from those areas, and then there'll usually be a payment that will come through to you that will be APRA and AMCOS, and so there is a gain. So there's the sound recording side of things, and I guess this is where we're talking about these three distinct differences. If you draw a line down the middle, we've got the songwriting over this side and the sound recording over this side. The sound recording does get a large portion of it, so whoever owns the copyright in the sound recording, and that might be labels, performers, session musicians, things like that, as well as the people who wrote the music. So there's a whole big group of people over here. This side, the people who wrote the music, the only people that can share in that is the people who wrote it. So that might be composers, producers, and also the one other entity that can receive a royalty with that group are publishers, so music publishers. If you have ever signed, or your co-writers have signed with a music publisher, they do get a percentage of royalties that are given to songwriters and composers. And so that portion over here, as much as it's split down the middle, you'll notice the royalty or the amount that you get will not be half. It's usually smaller, and you'll get a little portion that might come through from APRA. So if there is let's say a download of a song, there will be an element of that where there is a mechanical or reproduction right, and that's for the sale of the song, again being paid to the songwriters and composers. And then there is an element of that would come through to APRA, which is the performing right, and that's the little communication that happened once as you downloaded that song. So it's a little portion of it. So there'll be a performing right, a mechanical right, and there's all the other stuff that you'll get about the sound recording. It's very complicated.
It is complicated, but I think it's important to know what you're doing. So if someone else has paid for the recording, or let's say you're doing a cover of somebody else's song, you may own the sound recording, but the
yes.
copyright is going to that person. So I recently, last year, I did a live track that we recorded and we've released, and there was a part maybe that essentially sampled lyrics and melody of a part of a song, just in at about 30% of the song. But I had to go and I wanted to do the right thing, but I found this person and I contacted them and I said, we want to cover your song as a part of this. who is your publisher, and so I had to apply for the right and pay a small amount to get permission to record that song, because I wanted that songwriter to get a piece of what we were doing, because we were adding it to a part of our song. And as an artist, I want to be the change, and I want to reap what I sow, and so all those kind of things. I don't want to sneak around. I actually want that songwriter, because I'm a songwriter. I want to get paid for what I do. So that takes effort, right? That wasn't something that
it does.
I actually had to write multiple emails and pursue that.
It can be really complicated, and I think that you're totally right. There's sort of two sides of it, where you are doing the right thing and you want to be ethical in this way, and you also want to make sure you don't end up in hot water. It's amazing if you do anything like that and you use someone's song without their permission, and particularly if you use a sound recording, a sample, and you don't get permission, you can end up in all kinds of problems. It's honestly not worth it. And I do think that just do yourself a favor, and not knowing where to go, that's really okay. Go to your PRO. So come to APRA AMCOS. We'll help you out. We'll tell you what you need to do. And you will have to go and do some running around and contacting copyright owners, but you will do yourself a massive favor.
Yeah, and look, I think something that I've talked a lot about in what I do is we want people to buy our music. We want people to engage with us. But as artists, are we willing to actually purchase somebody's album on iTunes, or are we just streaming it for free on Spotify? Like, where's the give and take of what we want people to do in return to us, but we're not actually willing to do that with other artists? And so that's just one of Kate's convictions. I did
Absolutely.
that. I bought a bunch of music on iTunes because I've been listening to those albums over and over, and they've really helped me, in lockdown. And I thought, I want to, in a small way, say thank you to that artist, rather than just doing, the 5 cents that they get from streaming. And so, I would want to encourage people. What are you doing to give back? Not just hoping that people do that for you. So that's why I did that with that song. And I want to be a woman and an artist of integrity. And so it costs time and money and effort to do that. But it also means that I'm safe if later on something happens exactly what you said.
Absolutely.
If you blow up and you get sued, which happens.
Absolutely.
And
can happen.
It can happen.
And you can sleep well at night knowing you've done the right thing, right? I mean, this is the thing. I think it's about supporting one another, and you're absolutely right. It's such an age-old approach. Just treat others how you want to be treated, and I don't think that should be any different when it comes to creativity and music. I think that you would assume and want the same treatment and respect. So it doesn't really make any sense not doing that if you expect it in return.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, let's pivot a little bit and talk. A question that we're asking a lot of our speakers is this whole thing of, what challenges are you seeing? So you're in the education space. You're talking with a lot of artists. You're connecting with like training institutions as well. What challenges are you seeing around COVID, around pandemics, around live streaming that artists are facing? And do you have any strategies for them to overcome those? As they're watching, going, I don't know how to deal with this. What do I do? I'd love your thoughts.
I think that's, it's huge, right? We could speak all day about the challenges, and we could talk, because it's really multifaceted, and I think it's affecting people and creatives and every industry in many different ways. I think that when we're looking at music, such a huge thing is we're creatives. And I think a huge part about that is having a connection. And I think people are struggling to find that. And everyone has done such a great job of finding new ways. This is a perfect example, right? Doing this. I mean, instead of realizing, okay, we can't all physically be together, let's do it online. The whole online thing is incredible. We can do this. I think people are getting fatigued writing together online. And I think, but it's something that people are really... it's working really well for some people. I think it's really difficult for others. So I think that's a real challenge, being expected to communicate and work in this kind of face-to-face way, but there's a screen between us all. Obviously live. I mean, the live shows, festivals, getting together and creating and performing music, the change in that industry is just huge, and it's affecting everyone who works in the industry, and that's the people who work behind the scenes and the people who are creating the music. It's everyone. I mean, this industry is gigantic. I think such a huge challenge is, particularly I notice it here in Australia, is probably our government realising how important our industry is and how much we give to people. So I think that that's huge. Mental health is just a massive challenge for so many people. So those challenges are they're big, you know, and they're very real. But I think it's so amazing seeing how adaptable people are being. So I think, for one thing, what's really encouraging is seeing how much people are being adaptable, and probably encouraging people to prepare for the unknown. So even if you, in the past, you know, we'd book a show or a tour and think, great, you know, off we go. And really now you have to be prepared for the fact that that might not take place. It might be shut down. It might change. So I think prepare for the unknown and have a backup plan. That's such a huge thing. And learn how to be adaptable. We really all have to step outside our comfort zone and learn and share. And I think that what's encouraging is seeing how much people are sharing and kind of caring for one another and communicating and finding different ways to help each other out. So I think if we can all really take a moment to not just think about ourselves and think about, you know, our industry and how to give back and how to help support it, that's incredible. I mean, this in itself, these kinds of this summit that you're doing, it's amazing, right? This is a great way for people to connect and to talk and to learn from one another. It's the perfect time to be doing that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. My heart's encouraged. Thank you. We talked before a little bit about love languages, and words of affirmation are definitely mine. So look, and I agree. And especially here in Australia, we have our big industry conference, which is called Big Sound. It was meant to happen in September, but they had to cancel it. And I was so bummed. I had my ticket. I was so excited to come and connect with a bunch of people in the industry. And I was like, even more with that being cancelled, we need things like this that are easy access. The bar is low in the sense of you don't have to be at this level of success or career viability. It's actually about, hey, everyone's welcome. Let's just learn together. And exactly what you're saying, this whole thing of looking for ways to support the community around us, recognizing that the producers are struggling, graphic designers are struggling. It's not just, well, you know, I can't play my shows, but the sound guys and the venues, and, you know, looking for ways to connect and build relationship and press into what we can control, which is that this whole thing of community. And I think I've loved being able to be a part of that and seeing different groups rise up and going, hey, let's join together, let's support one another.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And seeing people who you wouldn't expect working together, I mean, that's an amazing thing. And you're totally right too about the different levels of, you know, in your career, whether you're, you know, you feel like you're completely new and emerging, or as opposed to someone who you might find you really look up to or was very established. I think it's always encouraging to realise that if you reach out to people, it's amazing how often people say yes. You know, if you reach out and ask for some advice even, or a chat, or the chance to communicate with someone, most people are pretty happy to share. And I think I do think what's really nice is maybe this screen between us all has made people a little bit more confident in being able to do that, and that's pretty cool.
Or you can be business up top, pajamas and or leggings, or, you know, soft pants as they call them.
Totally.
Yeah. Look, it's so interesting, and look, we can disconnect. We don't have to be traveling. You know, it does reduce a lot of barriers to connection, where you might be in a different city. How do you actually meet up for coffee? Well, I have my cup of coffee and you might have yours, and we do that together. And
exactly.
You know, I think for me, I don't think live streaming is going to go away. I think it's going to happen. And I think that the technology is going to catch up to the capacity that people have to have paywalls and, you know, actually be able to do private shows and actually get, you know, have an income as an artist, but it'd be really valuable and engaging for the viewer and the fan. So things I think are going to continue, but I don't think we do it without the relationship. And so I love that you said yes when I reached out to you, and I have, you know, asked maybe I think 60 or 70 speakers if they would be interested. And I even reached out to some of my big idols and, you know, the people that I follow in the industry. And look, I'm not surprised that they said no, that's totally fine. But also let's just ask the question.
Yeah, let's just ask.
And it doesn't matter. And that's one of the things about being an artist is you have to slightly have a thick skin and, you know, be okay with the no's, but we won't get a yes unless we ask. And so
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Love it. Hey, we did touch on mental health just before, Caroline. So again, we're asking all the speakers and all the featured artists this question because it is such a challenging time. The world is just so topsy-turvy. What we thought we had control over, we don't anymore, and especially here in Australia. I know a lot of other places in the world, you know, there is more touring and music is back, and I'm so jealous for some of my favorite artists because I can't see them play. But you know, how have you been going in terms of just, you know, being a woman in the industry, working, moving, challenging? How have you been managing your mental health? And even if you haven't been, you know, ticking all the boxes all the days, you know, I don't always do everything I want to do, but has there been anything helpful for you just to take care of yourself in this crazy time?
Definitely. I think, for one thing, acknowledging that things aren't perfect and they never will be is a really big thing. I think actually accepting that it's really okay to not get to everything. It's also really okay to not feel great. It's not great to feel not great, but it's really okay. And I think being honest about it is really important. You need to, I mean, we may not have people around us that we want to see all the time now, but we do have this, right? We have this ability to still communicate and speak. And we touched on this earlier when we were chatting, Kate. I think it's really interesting that from all of this chaos of the world, one thing I just feel so grateful for is realizing how much people are willing to talk about mental health. We didn't talk about it like this in the past, but we talk about it now because it's a real thing. It's always been a real thing, and it's a real challenge for most people at some point in their life. And so I think we seem to all be doing a pretty good job of asking the question and talking. So I think that for me, my big thing is being able to communicate with the people that I love and know, reaching out to people, also people I work with, and just going, how are you going? Are you coping okay? You know, and I'm having very honest conversations with people, and it's always great. You know, you have these honest conversations with people about how they're going, and then you find yourself talking about it. And I feel like I'm kind of connecting with people on a deeper level than what we used to in a day-to-day sense. So I think that communication is really amazing. I'm a non-socials person. I'm not on socials, and I probably miss out on a lot of things in the world, but I am actually very grateful for it because I think it sends you a bit mad sometimes. So for me, I find not being on, and look, that's not the greatest tip for people who are creatives and trying to self-promote, but I think that from a personal sense, I personally found that it wasn't helpful for me. So I jumped off socials quite a while ago. And another thing I've really reconnected with, and again, I see so many people doing it, is just nature, getting outside. I mean, it's just a huge thing. I feel like everyone I speak to is seeking some kind of tree change or sea change or getting out into the world a little more than we used to. And that for me is such a huge thing that I'm finding myself doing much more than I used to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, I think the opportunity to connect and to build relationship, and what you were saying there with socials, it's really about setting some boundaries, right? And going, what is good for me, what's not good for me, how do I segment, you know, or just limit, like we do that with kids. We limit their screen time, or we limit how much ice cream they can have, or we limit, you know, how many snacks they can have before dinner. But
we don't do it for ourselves.
We do it for ourselves. And so, you know, being able to just go, okay, I don't have to cut everything. If you want to quit sugar, maybe you don't get rid of that straight away. You just stop drinking sweet.
Yeah.
And so you give yourself some boundaries. And I love that that's something that you did. And yours is quite a firm boundary. And for others, you know, limiting your time, or there's apps that tell you, nope, you've had enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And take a break sometimes too. I mean, it's an amazing thing, you know, to take a couple of days off and go somewhere, you know, just mentally go somewhere else, turn it off, give yourself a couple of days break, or whether it's of a night time, you get to a certain point in the night and you turn it off. You're right. It's about setting boundaries. I shouldn't be here preaching to people about not being on socials, but I do think it's those boundaries. You're totally right. We probably need to look after ourselves a little bit more in that way.
I love that. I love the finding something that works for you, and part of that is experimenting and testing, and actually equals the life that you want to live. And so sometimes, what is the norm, going, hey, I don't have to comply to that. I don't have to live in that space. But, you know, it is definitely challenging. And, you know, I would even think going a little bit further in that is like, well, what are we afraid of? What are we, the FOMO of missing out on news or connection with people? But we have this incredible thing where we can call them and we can chat with them and we can, engage with people that we really want. But yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah, so funny.
It's amazing what a conversation can do.
And look, I've started doing that, just trying to, like, it's sunnier here in Melbourne now because we're in spring, hallelujah. But I've decided, okay, I'm just going to walk and I'm going to call my friends in that time frame, or I'm going to listen to a podcast and actually use it where I'm hitting two birds with one stone. So I found that really valuable, even today, just going for a walk and going,
that's great.
Touch base with a couple of people and just do what is going to bring me life, is rather than trolling on Facebook to try and see what's going on. Anyway.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Hey, are there any resources that you could highlight that are really great for artists as we kind of wrap up our chat that APRA and AMCOS have? So I talked about, the story of a song, which is a cool, flyer that I had, or some other really great resources that you'd like to highlight for people who are trying to get their head around copyright and royalties and being registered as a copyright owner and as a composer.
I think a really big thing is, this is all about educating yourself. And that doesn't mean you have to do all yourself. I mean, the information is there and it's available and you can talk to people. You can ask the questions. I think our website is a really great resource. It's got, as I said before, there's a chat bot, which means you can just ask it questions and it'll often, standard questions like, what is an ISRC code, or an ISRC? If you type it into the chatbot, it'll give you all the answers. So it's that sort of stuff where if you want to just sit there and randomly ask questions, you'll get a lot of responses to things. There's a lot of information on the website. Funnily enough, isn't it ridiculous that I'm about to say, actually, our socials have a lot of information on them. So there's a lot of resources on there. And so, different initiatives, and because we run a lot of initiatives and we're part of a lot of programs, and, we have grants available, and we have sort of different, there's a lot of great stuff that's kind of happening that you can still be a part of. So I think if you kind of keep across that, that's great. In terms of, I think I would also say that understanding your rights, going back to the real basics of what it is that we look after, understanding your rights and having some good backups and good places to go to ask the questions. I will always say, feel free to always contact APRA AMCOS. There will be someone there to help you out. There's another great organisation, and I'm not sure what's available in other territories outside of Australia, but here we have the Arts Law Centre of Australia, and it's a great place to go to when you have questions about, they can help you out with kind of band agreements and publishing, like all this kind of basic stuff, and you can get advice from them. If you join up as a member, it's free or cheap. So I'd sort of, there's a couple of those organisations that are great to be across. Get in touch with them, have a chat to them.
That's great. I love that. And especially when we're, going to be in some of those sticky situations. And I've heard stories from people who, recorded with a producer, and then that producer's demanding a copyright split. I don't know. And, if you're not sure, before signing, ask the question, reach out to your PRO. I love that. Reaching out to an art law or an entertainment lawyer, those kind of things, just to find out. It's worth it to do something that, serves everyone and connects, but also helps you understand and lock in your rights from what actually is yours, rather than being pressured. I didn't know that I could ask that question. Ask the question, knock on the door,
totally.
Reach out. And I love that there are so many resources. We'll pop the link to Arts Law. I think it's artslaw.com.au in the under this video as well. And do you have any kind of final thoughts in regards to speaking to the summit attendees who are, just trying to figure out, how do I make a career out of this, and who also maybe have an expectation of the old school, maybe I'll just get discovered and go viral, and is it a long game? Should we be looking for this in the sense of the, long haul and a lifelong career rather than just a flash in the pan?
I think so. I think that assuming that it's all going to suddenly happen one day and everything's going to be, roses straight away, is you're probably setting yourself up to, for heartbreak, to be honest. I mean, this is something that you should be doing because you love it. And I think if you are seeking out a career based on the fact that you want to be famous purely for the sake, and if you've kind of forgotten about the fact that you like making music, you might have lost your way a little bit. I think what's great is often there are people out there who you really admire and you love what they're doing. I think learn from them. It's not about mimicking them, but it is actually probably looking at what they're doing. Who do they connect with? What do they do? How do they promote themselves? This is great stuff, right? This is all, it's all there. It's all available to us. And again, reach out to people who you kind of do admire and connect with them. I think that, and really from where I sit, obviously I sit in this kind of place where it's about rights and copyright and looking after yourself in that way. You need to educate yourself. The amount of people that are out there and they haven't armed themselves with enough knowledge, it can really set you up to fail. So I would say this stuff is amazing. Educating. You don't have to go and have a formal education in music business. I do think you need to ask a lot of questions and you need to do a lot of research and a lot of learning. So this sort of thing is perfect. There's so much available online. So I think kind of make the time to watch videos and read a bunch of things and arm yourself with that knowledge. And every time you have a question, reach out to somewhere and, someone that or contact a PRO or an organisation that you're aware of and say, does anyone know, where to go with this?
Yeah.
Someone will know. Someone will point you in the right direction and you'll keep on going.
Yeah, so good. And that's just encouraging us to pursue community, to pursue relationship, to network, because again and again, everyone's saying that's what's going to last you in the industry. Is not about what you do necessarily, but about the relationships that you build, the authentic connections, where we're just, wanting to support one another. We're not in competition. We're not trying to compete. We're actually wanting to collaborate and in that community. And I love that we can do that.
And I think it's about being ethical, those everything that you're doing. I think, as much as you think the industry is big, it's not. Regardless of where you are, word gets around. So I think you always need to be very aware of the way that you're behaving and communicating with people and making decisions and always being ethical, because it will come back to bite you otherwise. And it makes you feel better. It's a great way to exist. Who knew? Being ethical.
But it does cost us. And I think, we were talking before about, having integrity. Like, the whole thing, the reason not everybody does it and it seems like a really cool thing is because the people who do it, it costs them something. It costs them time, energy, relationships, money, effort that other people can get away with. But yeah, it depends, I guess, who you want to be. So thank you so much, Caroline, for just jumping on board and sharing so wonderfully around your heart, around what you do. I feel like you touched the surface of your knowledge and your understanding. And so, yeah, I'm so grateful.
Thanks so much.
To engage, obviously not with you on socials, but if they want to engage with AMCOS, we'll put all that information in the description. And, it's been so lovely to connect and to hear your heart and your story. But I would say my takeaway from this is, artists, you've got to go and you've got to do some research. You've got to understand no one else is responsible for that except for you, in regards to knowing your rights and your responsibilities around your music, around your IP, but also about how you ethically and responsibly use other people's intellectual property. That's so important.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. So lovely to chat to you. Enjoy Brisbane. Sunnier, warmer than here down in Melbourne.
It is.
You on the summit, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.